record it to our computer as well. And here we go, live. It'll be 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Today, we are exploring nutrition response testing. As you've been following along, you know that what we're doing at You Define Wellness is introducing you to one of our network providers who will be doing a deep dive into her modality and letting us know what it is, how it works, and why you should be doing it. And we're going to be doing that in about 15, 20 minutes. We're also going to be taking a lot of questions. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box wherever you are finding this video, and we will try to answer them. If it's live, we'll be answering them live. If not, we'll come back and answer them for you. But without further ado, let me jump in and introduce you to Erika Schultz. She is the owner of Paramount Wellness in the Metro Denver area of Colorado. And she's going to inform all of us what nutrition response testing is. So Erika, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Denise. Yeah, welcome everybody. Erika Schultz here. I am a doctor of Chinese medicine and acupuncture, licensed in the state of Colorado and Michigan. I have a practice actually in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, but I also work with people all over the country and other areas of Colorado as well. So today we're going to be focusing on what is actually about 80% of my practice, I would say, and that is specifically doing nutrition response testing. So I'm also a clinical nutritionist, and that became my specialty because I got into acupuncture school back in about 10 years ago. I can't believe it's been 10 years. I got into acupuncture school with a curiosity and just another second ambition on life. I had a major corporate career for 10 plus years. But I knew I wasn't really following my passion and my heart, and I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. So I made that major shift, went to grad school for the first year, got through the first year of grad school, and my health completely tanked. And I was looking at the next 3 years of a pretty arduous program and concerned that I wasn't going to make it through. So my twin sister in healing and excuse me, and in life, and my brother are both chiropractors, and they were learning this thing called nutrition response testing at the time. So I said, they said to me, you know, you need to check this out. Really trying to encourage me to do something. And I didn't take action, excuse me, as most people with, with health issues until it really, was a problem and affecting my day-to-day living. And it finally got to that point. I had been getting some hits for a while that I need to do something a little bit different. And I needed to figure some things out, but I just didn't find that motivation until it really became a problem. And at that point, I was willing to do anything, which put me in a position where I was open to things that maybe I wouldn't have been open to before. And my sister and brother tried to explain a little bit about what nutrition response and testing was. It seemed a little bit too out there for me or too woo-woo at the time. And so I, kind of brushed it off. And then finally my twin sister said to me one day, I know you don't get it, but there's this lady in your town. I was living in Austin, Texas at the time. She's advanced trained in this modality and she can help you. And I want you to go see her as soon as possible. And I did. Within weeks, it was like I was living in a different body. I started that path towards getting a healthier level of dealing with chronic symptoms and ailments. And I didn't realize how I was living in a subpar experience of life up until that point. In other words, I didn't realize how tired I was. I didn't realize that it was not normal to have that kind of level of energy on a day-to-day basis and to be that much of a struggle to get through day-to-day living. So I just didn't really know how unhealthy I really was. And I embarked on a journey to basically rebuilding my foundation of my body at a physiological level, which then of course, once you start on that path, and it's sort of like Maslow's hierarchy, when you get those basic needs met, that starts opening you up to so many other pathways. I was able to access certainly much more in terms of, getting more at the spiritual level. That was more accessible to me at that point, being more intuitive and things like that. So it was a very important part of my journey to actually start there at the physiological body. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the work that I do. And here I am to talk about it a little bit. So Denise, did you want to do any sort of questions? Did you have questions lined up? Did you want me to just keep going?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and keep going and dive into, how nutrition response testing actually works, what it's doing.
Well, it works really well. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that, and this is actually some points that I probably wouldn't have had up until about the last year, and just sort of seeing what's laid out before us. And a lot of us are witness to this right now, especially in the wellness world. One of the things that I think we don't recognize, or we're not conscious of, I'm not really talking to this group so much right now as maybe the larger population, is that we have this ability to heal already in our in our bodies. And it's this innate design, it's this incredible intelligence that oftentimes we have sort of become deprogrammed to that actually exists, and that somewhere health exists, outside of us, or in some other form, and that someone has to do unto us, kind of thing. But the reality is our body is so intelligent. We possess such an incredible intelligence and design that just needs to be unlocked and given the opportunity to be balanced in a form of homeostasis, which is where we find true healing can actually take place. That's kind of a comment towards maybe some of the broader population. And then in the world of people that are seekers and kind of already get that premise, and already understand that and are on the journey and quest to find better health. One of the things that I would, encourage you to look at is what kind of results are you getting? And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why people can be challenged to find better health. And specifically, I'll explain to you a little bit more about, how nutrition response testing can address each of those reasons. But I think that's one of the things that sometimes, we can develop a relationship with a healer, or we can develop, a thought or a story about what it is. I mean, I hear my patients telling me their stories all the time. Well, I have this, but it's because of boop, 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 boop. And you guys probably know what I'm talking about. So we all have this idea of like why it is that we have that and where it's coming from, but yet we're not seeing it go away, even with that information and that, intelligence. The result is not that we are improving anything, kind of thing. So I think that results is really important factor in this too, is just to think about what kind of results are you getting in the terms of the path that you're taking currently, and what might be missing in that total picture that hasn't really crossed your path yet, because you're thinking it is a certain thing. You've got a truth about it, right? And we all tend to do that in various areas of our life. Just we have decided something, and then we kind of get blocked from moving forward, if you will.
Can I jump in and ask a question?
Sure.
So we kind of jumped to the why people should be doing nutrition response testing. And I think that's an excellent thing. You've got some great information there, and we've got some great comments that are going on our Facebook Live. My question is this: what exactly is it? Is it a blood test? Is it a questionnaire? What are the semantics to what nutrition response testing is? Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
So it's specifically a way of analyzing the body and determining where there may be blocks. And the first thing we do is we try to understand, is the nervous system in some kind of a state of confusion? That's a lot of times where sometimes people are being held up, especially people that have been doing work for a while, is that if the nervous system, and the way I describe this to people is, imagine your body is like this incredible castle, right? And there's some rooms that need some some refurbishing and maybe some new furniture and maybe a little bit of fresh paint. And we are trying to get into the castle so that we can start doing some remodeling, right? But in order to get into the castle, we got to get the keys to the castle. And we got to get past the moat there. And the guy that decides who gets to come in and out of the castle is the knight at the castle door. And I describe that or liken that to the nervous system. So the nervous system is the part of your body that sort of regulates your ability to heal. So when you're in the sympathetic mode, you're like think of it like as the gas pedal. Okay, that's where you spend most of your time, in the sympathetic mode. And then there's the parasympathetic mode, which is the brake pedal. So gas pedal to brake pedal, that needs to be working smoothly. Like if you imagine you're driving your car and you're accelerating, but you should be braking, that's going to be bad news. Same thing in your body. So if your nervous system's not regulating well, you're stuck in overdrive, or you're stuck on the gas pedal and the brake pedal's not on long enough. And when the brake pedal is on, or the parasympathetic mode is taking place, that's where we get all of that beneficial healing. So the places where that often takes place is parasympathetic mode will go on when you're like trying to digest, and then also rest. So specifically, at nighttime is when you're going to be healing most often, because you're in that parasympathetic mode. So when we're not regulating well, when we haven't made that relationship and that shook the hand of the knight at the castle door, then he's not necessarily going to let us into the castle. So we got to make friends with the knight first. And that is getting the nervous system on a better track and regulating. Now, there's different things that can affect the nervous system's ability or inability to regulate properly. And what we do in the testing process, and we're using, some of you are familiar probably with AK, or applied kinesiology muscle testing. Now I'm going to pause there because I'm talking to an audience that knows a lot about different modalities. So what I want to distinguish for you all is that it's not all muscle testing, because people will say to me, oh, I've done nutrition response testing before. My chiropractor pushes on my arm, or muscle tests. So they think it's synonymous. Muscle testing is synonymous with nutrition response testing. And that's not actually true. There's various forms and approaches and steps and techniques that are used in muscle testing. And not every muscle tester is created the same. Being in the world of healthcare professionals, I've been amongst groups of people oftentimes that are trying to learn muscle testing. And they get super frustrated because within a few hours they haven't mastered it. And I just tell people it's like any other thing. And then so sometimes I'll will be, well, I can't, this doesn't work, this isn't, and they'll just kind of dismiss it, kind of thing. And it's like any other thing that you learn. It's a skill, and you have to practice it and practice it over and over and over again. So when I started this work in 2012, I was not the same muscle tester today that I was back then. And it's taken, years of pushing on arms and working with people to get really skilled at it. To the point where now I have the ability to muscle test, and I can do that without having the person in front of me, which makes my work a little more accessible to people that aren't necessarily in my physical location. But not everybody can do that, and not everybody is the same kind of muscle tester. So it's just an access, it's a way of getting feedback from the body. But the beauty of nutrition response testing is really in the steps that we're taking. And one of them being, talking to the knight at the castle door, making friends there, getting past that barrier to entry that oftentimes is getting mixed. And so what that'll sometimes look like clinically is, if there's nervous system dysregulation, the person might be stopped up in their healing journey. So they might have been getting results for a while, doing something, and then they just kind of plateaued. The other way that could look is they might go into like a healing crisis. So a healing crisis is oftentimes a signal that there may be some dysregulation in the nervous system as well. And so all of those things are important to get identified and addressed, because a nervous system that's not regulating well is a body that's not healing effectively. And you have that scenario going on for years and years and years. Well, downstream, you have an immune system that's like, I'm working overtime. I'm like at this choo-choo train here trying to get up the hill. And I have no ability the nervous system can't regulate well. So this body can't heal when it's supposed to be healing properly. And I'm taking the hit for that. Now I'm working on, dealing with all these other factors that are in the body, and we're not able to resolve a lot of that. So then you start have that cumulative process, and before you know it, you got somebody that has, chronic allergies, or food sensitivities, or autoimmune situations, and somewhere on the spectrum of those. And once they have one autoimmune situation, well, they've got a second one potentially brewing, and a third one. So everybody's sort of on that spectrum somewhere in terms of developing that level of stress on their body on a regular, ongoing basis. It's just a matter of where are you on the spectrum, and is it affecting your daily life enough to actually be in action about it, right? So one of the things that we look at in nutrition response testing too is, of course, diet, because diet is a big factor. Certainly you can't expect to rebuild a body if you're eating garbage food. And this is also, I think, an important area for people to understand, is that, I think a lot of times people think, especially when they hear the word nutritionist, they're like, oh, like, I don't want anybody looking at my diet. Like, I don't want to know the truth. And what I always tell people is, you don't have to get it right. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to get it going. You have to get it started, and you have to start just confronting what you're putting into your food. But I think a lot of times too, people think, well, I'm lousy at diet, so I'm not going to be able to really ever look at my nutrition. And if you're in a situation where you're actually feeling like you are on a diet, then we're not doing something correct. Like, eating well should be a gradual transformation that takes place in little nuggets over time, and with different little shifts in the daily routine that just are simple and are easy, and things that can be done without feeling deprived and at a loss, and things like that. In our process with nutrition response testing, we will target and identify food sensitivities, which is huge. So a lot of people come to us because they're just sort of in this, vast, confusion about what they need to be eating and what they shouldn't be eating. And they've done the blood tests, or they've done the elimination diets, and it's very confusing. It's very overwhelming. They can't tell if that, helped or that didn't help. And some of the blood testings, they have their shortfalls. They'll oftentimes come back as having sensitivities that aren't necessarily true sensitivities, just because it's, taking a picture of the blood in a moment of time. And if you're in some sort of situation where you're reacting to your food or your environment, this goes for even, seasonal allergies, there's some sort of level of immune system burden going on that needs to be unwound to find out why it is. Because again, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. You are such an incredible human being in your program and design. You already have what you need to heal. Something has just interfered with that. And if you start showing signs of having allergies, either to your food or your environment, you are having indication that your immune system's being stressed, and it's overburdened, because already in your body, you have the ability to adapt to your environment no matter what. So getting to the real food sensitivities is helpful, and which ones are the priorities to do too. Well, we can figure that out as well. So already you're probably seeing, like, there's a level of customization that comes along with this. Like, there's not one food for everybody, and this isn't like, I had a health journey, and I discovered when I did this and I did that and did this, that I got better. And so I wrote a book about it, and that's the answer to health, right? Go ahead.
I didn't want to interrupt. I thought you were at a pause, but maybe since we've already interrupted, I have to tell you, we have so many comments that are going on in the Facebook feed that they are getting lost, and that I'm not seeing the first one. So I want to ask some of these before we go any further.
Yeah, sure.
This one just was asked, says, how often do you need to get tested? Meaning, when you do a course correction, at what point is a retest recommended to either continue in the same direction, or maybe make additional changes, or even return to some earlier practices?
Good question. So in the beginning is when the body's most volatile, and coming back to the night, that's when we're, sort of like trying to build a relationship with that nervous system, get that nervous system on the right track. So in the very beginning, for about the first 6 to 8 weeks, we usually see people weekly. And when we're doing this work, we're really we're using supplementation. And this is another point too that I think is important, is we're using supplementation to have an effect on the body, but it's a little bit different than the way that you think of using supplementation. Like right now, many people are just, going to the store and they're, well, I heard that we're all deficient in, vitamin D. So everybody's probably, and right now that's kind of true because everybody's inside, especially in Colorado, where we have tons of sun. I've never put so many people on vitamin D until this past year, but there's always a du jour, a vitamin du jour. So, it's been magnesium's taken its turn, vitamin D takes its turn, turmeric's had, a big flash, and all those things to some level, there might be a little bit of truth in it, but, I got to tell you that the supplement industry is like $1 billion industry. And a lot of times people are just taking stuff that is actually potentially could even be stressing out their body even further, especially females and females with potential thyroid imbalances. So taking the wrong supplements or the wrong herbs can actually escalate a situation, because the thyroid is really sensitive to those kinds of things, the wrong modality, and so the tension might be good, but you're still using supplementation to address like a symptom level. You're at the symptom part. So at the our process to really use the supplementation to create a little mini healing cycle. And as we do that and we deal with each of these stressors that might be showing in the testing, things change and the body gets better. It'll get through something. Now that doesn't usually happen in a week, but the body will always give us in the testing process the order of operations that we should deal with and the path that we should go forward with, and in the right order and at the right time. So your body will show us the information that it can deal with. So it'll give us just what we need to be able to produce a healing response. And we will give it through your body the right nutritional supplementation to facilitate that. So there could be, 10 different products that I could use to deal with one issue, but of those 10 products, or sometimes it's like 20 products, you might only test her. And your body might say, this is the one that I need, not, the 19 other ones. I need this particular one. And that's where we see the results so quickly, and we see improvements and we have results because we are targeting it to exactly what your body needs. So weekly at first, and then we usually will go into what we call healing and observation. We're doing a check-in maybe a couple times a month as we're peeling back the layers of the body. And then eventually we spread that out further.
So we have a couple of people who have mentioned pretty much the same thing, so I'm going to try to conceptualize it here. The two different comments, both having to say that, why are we associating healthy with what your weight is? That slim or super thin doesn't mean that you're healthy.
It's true. It's very true. Yeah, I always say that, and this kind of goes for it. I always say the ones that are symptomatic, like we're the lucky ones. In other words, we're the ones that have had something motivate us to get in action. It's the people that aren't symptomatic, or maybe that, they are thin, and they're walking around and they are sometimes the most unhealthy because their body just hasn't got to that point where they've met that symptom threshold and they've gotten it enough to put them in action, and invest in their health. And I think about that sometimes, I observe a lot, and I've worked with a lot of people over the years. And so I'm able to pick up the subtleties, that are around me. And yeah, true health isn't in just some sort of perfect, the way that you look kind of situation. But there is definitely a lot to, and just speaking of weight loss, certainly diet is a part of it, but I've worked with so many people over the years, I'm telling you that they have the best diets and they can't lose weight. Mm-hmm. And it's like anything else. It's almost like if you think about, autoimmune situations, which we're discovering more and more autoimmune conditions every day. And I want you to consider that we're only going to find as many autoimmune conditions as there are like drug therapy. So we don't often get a condition that's established with a ICD-10 code until we have a drug or to put that with, or some kind of a medical procedure to put that with. But a lot of wellness professionals recognize that we probably are going to have an autoimmune condition for just about every organ and every tissue before it's all over. And I put fat in that category because that's what I've seen. And even the lymphatic system, which oftentimes is what's contributing to a lot of people's inability to lose weight, is that they they have an autoimmune situation going on their fat cells. You've got a cell that has, if you think of a cell as this round, sort of structure, and what we call receptors, or think of them as little parking spaces sitting on the edge of the cell wall. Well, if you've got heavy metal toxicity in your body and you've got a heavy metal sitting in one of those parking spots, well, when the hormones come up to try to destroy that fat cell and do its most proper job, it gets to the parking lot and it's full. So it's, we have this level of toxicity going on, or we have some kind of an immune process going on that isn't being fully handled. And that's what's at the root of, having the ability to lose weight. And I call the fat skinny people, or those people that walk around looking skinny, but inside they've got all this tremendous amount of fat. It's called visceral fat all over their organs. They have their inflammations just showing up in a different way, So it's just a difference of where is your body's weak links and where is your body going to show that level of inflammation going on.
I love it. Now, nutrition response testing is not something that you just pull off of a shelf. You've gone through special training, and you said something to me about you're the only person in Colorado with a certain degree.
Yeah, the advanced trained. Yep. I'm okay, not in Colorado, in the Denver area.
Oh, in the Denver area. Okay.
Yeah, in the Denver area. That's advanced trained. And then I have mentored other practitioners in the area. I also teach courses to new healthcare practitioners in the area for the group that trained me as well, which is Ulan Nutritional Systems.
That's fantastic. I want to open this up to any questions for those who are on the Zoom call with us. Do any of you have something that you want to ask Erika while you've got her? Feel free to unmute yourself and speak up.
I just wanted to make a comment. This has been highly educational. I really had no understanding of your modality coming in today, which was like, I really have to be here and get an understanding, because I love what you've been talking about in just, being this detective, breaking down the different systems and having that priority of this is what we're going to hit. And everybody's an individual. Mm-hmm. You made the comment that, this is what worked for me. And so I'm going to write the book and that's the answer for everybody. And I'm like, that's not the case.
And so people are out there so swimming in that, they're on Dr. Google and they're ordering books from Amazon and trying to figure it out and spending lots of money on supplements and
the thing that hit me was the food sensitivity testing. Well, just, the sensitivities in general, it really made sense that, it's that snapshot in time that, there's so much going on in the body that, it's not necessarily something that can just be a black and white thing. And so often we have people that will come in to us as providers in different areas and say, I'm sensitive to all of these things. And so I'm going to restrict 100% of these things out of my life. And you're like, well, maybe we don't have to go that extreme.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate your approach to that. And let's back up a little bit and explore these things really deep.
Yeah, exactly. And bringing up or kind of going on a little bit further with Stephanie with the blood work. It's a part of our practice. I am trained in functional medicine as well. And so I will do review, lab findings from doctors that have ordered them for my patients. And sometimes they'll give us a little bit of information about, excuse me, where we're not looking and where we need to look a little bit further. So I like to bring that in as a component, but it's not the place I start. Because what I find is that a lot of issues are happening at more of a subclinical level. In other words, by the time that you get to the point where that blood work is showing something that's off, and this is especially true with thyroid stuff, and each lab test they're different, right? Laboratory diagnostics have to go through an arduous process of determining if they're sensitive enough and specific enough to determine what they're supposed to determine. And they get rated that way. And each test or diagnostic is different. And so what we kind of go in as consumers is that, well, it's the truth, right? Because it's a diagnostic test. Well, it's maybe some form of the truth, but it might not be. If in this test, it might be more of the truth, but over here, it might be less of the truth. And that definitely shows up in terms of current thyroid testing. And sometimes the way that doctors what tests they're calling for, we don't get the full picture. And, it's estimated that actually probably 80%, I think is what the AACE said, was that there's 80% of women are walking around with some kind of subclinical hypothyroidism. That means it's not diagnosed, but they're having symptoms. They can't lose the weight. They're tired. They're having insomnia, things like that. And that's, again, another example where we might be missing it, but the nutrition response testing is going to give us the information that we need to know, when I put my hand and make contact with that thyroid and I have the person's arm away from their body, does that arm go down and crash? And it's giving me an indication that the thyroid has no energy. And so those are the things that, it's a very basic level of it, but we'll assess that. But more importantly is why is the thyroid doing that? Because yes, it may be gluten because we've read books that blah, 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 maybe, but we need to know for sure. And oftentimes it's not one thing. It's not just one thing. It's a multitude of things. But for each individual, it might be slightly distinct in terms of what those multitude of things are that's stressing out that organ part or area.
Can I jump in and ask a really out there question? I'm usually the one who brings in the really weird questions. Because you talked about autoimmune system and you just mentioned gluten. I have a number of friends who in the United States, when they eat foods, they get allergies, they get reactions. When they go someplace else, they don't. So whether it's lactose intolerant, whether it's eating bread, it's just fascinating. So when you're looking at the nutrition response and the fact that everybody's different, do we need to take more into account where we come from as well? And I'm not talking genetic code, but for example, vitamin C. Everybody says vitamin C is important. If I take too much vitamin C, 2 glasses of orange juice, I break out. I mean, it's just I have a reaction to it. So it's how can we make sure that we take into account what types of food, but also where it comes from and where we come from?
Yeah, well, and that's the whole beauty of this process is that we get it clear that to that little that level of detail in terms of what's right for your body. Because even somebody with, and I know you're not really asking this, but it kind of brings up the thought, the way you're describing it is, just ancestry or genetic, code kind of thing. Still, you have two people, your sister, my twin sister, we didn't have the exact same blueprint as to what we needed to do or not do. There was a lot of similarities, but it wasn't exactly the same thing. And certainly each of our bodies wanted to go at the rate of healing and dealing with certain things at different times. So yes, where gluten's a good example. They're doing, what's happening in our food supply and our food systems, and that's often determined, by country, and politics comes into play. And that is definitely a component, specifically with some foods. And I would say the wheat food product is like that. and what's being sprayed and what's being allowed to be sprayed is certainly a part of that. Glyphosate is a big part of, and that's part of what we're identifying in the process is, do you have too much exposure to some of these toxins that are in your food supply? And is that accumulating in your body and causing you problems? But even the food sensitivities, I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I mean, a few years ago, somebody gave me a gluten bun and I was eating it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, my throat's closing up. And I was gluten-free at the time, not eating gluten. And I was like, wow, my reaction was so sensitive. Well, we got a little bit further into my body using some additional and new testing procedures, which I'll talk about that too in a minute, because I think that's an advantage. But and now I can eat gluten without having any reaction. Now I don't, because I call it garbage food. I know what they're doing to the wheat plant in our country, and I'm not gonna make that a regular part of my diet. But I can have a beer at a brewery and not have any problems, you know, and that sensitivity has been reversed, which would be the goal, is to take the boy in the bubble or the girl in the bubble and, you know, unwind some of that challenge to the immune system, heal the body so that some of these things become not a problem. Because, you know, the reality is when your body is balanced, you should, again, like it comes back to what I was saying earlier, you should adapt to your environment easily, you know, and that's an indication of good health when you're adapting to your environment easily. I think one of the other things points I'll make, just as that came up in that conversation, is, you know, this is a system and a technology that's used by a lot of practitioners across the country. I would always recommend trying to work with an advanced trained practitioner, because there's people that have varying levels of training in this. Advanced level is definitely significantly different than somebody who took the weekend introduction course into it, kind of thing, and might be just listing that on their website, kind of thing. So you do want to do some diligence there. Excuse me, but it's like when I have this system, and when I came out of, I literally started my practice when I was still in grad school. So I thought I wasn't going to make it through the next 4 years or 3 years. And I went from thinking that to then I was so inspired to learn everything I could about nutrition, clinical nutritional functional medicine. I started taking classes on the weekends in addition to my regular full-time, you know, curriculum. And I kind of, you know, swung the pendulum to the other side, paid for that a little bit with some adrenal fatigue at the end of my program. But that's how inspired I was. Started the practice back then. And what's nice is that I could be a practitioner coming out of grad school, and I already knew what the best products were to use with my patients. I had a systematic way of approaching them that only enhanced what I did with acupuncture and my Chinese medicine differentiation and diagnosis. And I have this like R&D team, because that's the thing is we practitioners out there, we're just working with bodies day in and day out. We don't have a lot of time for doing extensive research or planning. And it's nice to know that I have like an R&D department that's kind of back there keeping me up to speed on what's the latest things, because our world is changing too. And a lot of what we're doing with health these days has a lot to do with the environment. So, you know, it's like I have this team of people that can make sure that I'm up to speed on what's changing and what we need to do to adjust testing, or what we need to add in as stressors in our environment to be able to look for, and what products are the cutting edge to deal with things. So my patients benefit from that too. You know, we're not guessing a lot, you know, we're just going right in, being very efficient and effective, you know.
I think that's a good place for us to end this. Wow, great information. Thank you, Erika, for sharing that knowledge with us. We have posted your contact information on the Facebook Live. I recommend, if you want to have more of a conversation with her, reach out to her, schedule an appointment, get on her calendar. Yep. We will also have it, if you're watching this on YouTube, just look in the comment section area, the about section, and we will have her contact information. With that being said, I want to thank everyone for their participation. Stephanie and Natalie, thank you for your questions. Thank you for your and suddenly I'm getting feedback here. So it's a good time to end. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Denise.